Death is not something we talk about a lot, and it feels like a morbid topic, which I guess is why we avoid it, particularly in the West and in our modern worlds. I remember the first time I experienced loss of a loved one as a young child, and it took me totally by surprise. No one had ever talked about that this would happen, that the people you love leave. And I remember going through the process of grieving, having a funeral, doing all the process orientated things we have around death, the rituals, celebrating the life of their loved one, and then going back to just not talking about it again, to denying its existence. It's almost like we think if we don't talk about it, it won't happen. And of course it does. There is no greater certainty. The very fact that we're alive means we will also die, and those around us will too. And it's been a really interesting lesson for me, particularly my time with Buddhist monks and nuns really brought this home, and their approach to death, because they talk about it a lot. They meditate on death. And you might think, well, that sounds a bit morbid and like it would be quite depressing, so why would I do that? And yet, what that gives us is often a perspective, but also a preparation for the inevitable. And the most valuable lesson for me has been around impermanence. Knowing that everything we have around us we will eventually lose, because of course when we do die, we don't take anything with us. You know, that art you've got on the wall that you would be devastated to lose, the car that you love, the people around you, the things that you've collected, the books that you love, the family heirlooms, whatever you've got materially, none of that comes with us when we die. We lose it. And of course, for some of us, we lose it before then, whether it's natural disaster, sickness, divorce. There's so many things that can lead to us losing things. And I think this perspective often gives rise to this feeling that actually maybe those things are not as important as the importance we often place on them. Now, if we are aware of our death and this impermanence of our own life and everything that exists around us, it brings us perspective so that we worry less about the vase we've just broken in the kitchen, or the things that might get ruined when we have a flood. We start to then get perspective around the things that are important, the people around us, the mark we leave on the world, the way we interact with everybody. And it's interesting because we get a glimmer of this sometimes when near-death experiences happen. So if you've been in this position where you've lost someone close to you suddenly, or you've had a near-death experience yourself, or maybe faced down a terminal diagnosis, that then brings us to this position where we have to contemplate death, right? We have to think about it because it could be imminent. But here's the thing. It's imminent for us all. And when I say imminent, that could be tomorrow, it could be another 80 years. We don't know, but it's imminent to us all. We don't always get the warning of a near-death experience or a terminal diagnosis to give us this perspective. But if we did, what would we do differently? Often we ask ourselves these questions, right? When we're trying to get the important stuff to float to the top, when we're trying to live with more meaning and purpose, when we're trying to create a life by design, we'll ask ourselves questions like, what would you do if this was your last week on earth? And of course, eventually that's going to be true. Eventually we'll come to the week that is our last week on earth. How would we live it differently? And how does that impact how we live differently all of the time? And I don't mean in a non-consequence kind of way. You know, if you were going to die, you could do anything you want because you wouldn't be held responsible and don't need to be accountable. I mean in a way that the important stuff rises to the top, because here's the thing that Buddhist monks and nuns will often say. This day could be my last. So if it was, we might choose to do the important stuff, but we're also knowing that it might not be. Right? So we can't just go and live like there are no consequences. And I reckon that's the happy medium here, that's the middle ground. Because we treat people differently. We don't worry about the things that don't matter. We do the things that are important. And it's often this perspective. And we're not so sad about the inconsequential things we lose along the way, and the possessions and things that we hold on so tightly. We worry less about what others think of us, because all of this stuff we realize when it comes down to it doesn't really matter as much as we often make it matter. And a beautiful analogy that one of my teachers used is this concept of when we stay in a really nice hotel. So when you've been in a 5-star hotel and the sheets are beautiful, they're really thick and white and heavy and crisp and so comfy, and you've not had to make the bed and you won't have to wash them. And you get the robes and the slippers, and they're all luxurious and fluffy and beautiful too. You get all the freebies, and of course you sit there in your hotel room, you're drinking all the very expensive tea and you're using all the very expensive moisturizing cream. You're enjoying those beautiful sheets. And then when it comes time to check out, we don't cry about leaving the sheets and the stuff behind in the room, because we knew they were never ours to start with. We knew we were never staying. We always knew we were checking out. So we enjoy the nice hotel while we're there, and then we check out. And it's a little bit like that, our analogy with life and impermanence. We're here not forever, so make the most of it, enjoy it, do the things that matter, and allow the perspective that puts the things that are important at the top of your list.